Did you know that there is a Psalm 151? In the book of Psalms, as we know it in most Christian Bibles, there are 150 Psalms. However, there is something fascinating and perhaps surprising for many. The Septuagint, the oldest Greek translation of the Old Testament, contains one extra psalm known as Psalm 151. This psalm is considered apocryphal in many places, and its history is shrouded in mystery and theological debates that date back centuries. The existence of Psalm 151 raises the question of why it was excluded from the canonical versions of most Christian and Jewish traditions. To understand this, we must delve into the complex history of the formation of the biblical text and the nuances of different religious traditions. Psalm 151 is found in ancient manuscripts of the Septuagint, the translation of the Hebrew Old Testament into Greek, which was completed between the 3rd and 2nd centuries before Christ. This version was widely used in the Jewish diaspora and among the early Christians, becoming an important source of biblical text for many communities outside Judea. The content of Psalm 151 is peculiar and different from the other psalms we are accustomed to reading. It is a psalm of praise and humility, traditionally attributed to King David. In the text, David speaks of his youth when he was just a shepherd tending his father's sheep before being chosen by God to defeat Goliath and eventually become the great king of Israel. I was the smallest among my brothers and the youngest in my father's house. I tended my father's sheep, David says, reflecting on his humility and his unexpected destiny. The exclusion of Psalm 151 from the Hebrew canon and subsequently from most Christian versions such as the Vulgate and Protestant versions can be attributed to a number of theological and historical factors. The Hebrew canon, established by the rabbis after the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD, was consolidated into a fixed number of books that we know today as the Tanakh. Within this canon, the rabbis decided to include 150 psalms. It is likely that Psalm 151 was considered redundant or not inspired enough to warrant inclusion. Moreover, the text of Psalm 151, as it appears in the Septuagint, presents characteristics that set it apart from the canonical psalms. It is actually a composition of two psalms found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. These scrolls, discovered in the mid-20th century in Qumran, contain a large amount of biblical and apocryphal texts, including Hebrew versions of what was later translated in the Septuagint as Psalm 151. The discovery of these scrolls shed new light on the process of forming the biblical canon and the textual variations that existed in ancient times. From the Qumran manuscripts, we know that Psalm 151 was originally two distinct psalms that were combined into one in the Septuagint. This combination may have been one of the reasons why the rabbis and Christian theologians later decided not to include the psalm in their Bible versions. The lack of a unified version and the existence of different textual traditions made its inclusion controversial. However, Psalm 151 did not completely disappear from religious tradition. It is still found in several editions of the Septuagint and is included in the Psalter of the Eastern Orthodox Church, where it is treated with the same level of reverence as the other canonical psalms. For the Orthodox tradition, Psalm 151 holds particular importance as it reflects David's humility and trust in God, themes central to the Christian faith. The controversy surrounding Psalm 151 is a fascinating example of how the biblical canon was formed and of the theological and historical debates that shape the Bible as we know it today. This psalm reminds us that the formation of the biblical text was a dynamic and multifaceted process, influenced by different religious traditions and communities. The decision to include or exclude certain texts from the Bible was not only a matter of theological criteria, but also of community identity and religious interpretation. But why does Psalm 151 still spark so much interest? Part of its appeal lies in the fact that it offers a glimpse into the inner life of David, one of the most complex and enigmatic characters in the Bible. This psalm, which reflects on David's youth and his unexpected calling from God, gives us a window into his humility and unwavering faith. For many, Psalm 151 represents the eternal struggle of humanity to understand its purpose and place in the world, a theme that resonates deeply across all religious traditions. In addition, Psalm 151 serves as a reminder of the diversity of textual traditions and the richness of biblical history. It reminds us that the Bible is not a monolithic book, but a collection of texts that were written, edited, and preserved by different communities over many centuries. Each community, in interpreting and transmitting these texts, brought its own perspectives and understandings, enriching the biblical tradition and offering multiple ways to understand the divine. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Hebrew version of Psalm 151 offers even more details that are not present in the Greek version. In these texts, David is described in greater detail in his youth, reinforcing his humility and his role as God's chosen one. This additional emphasis reinforces the message that God often chooses those whom the world ignores or despises, transforming them into instruments of his will. The discovery of Psalm 151 among the Qumran scrolls also raised new questions about the relationship between the original Hebrew text and its Greek translations. The way Psalm 151 was translated and adapted in the Septuagint reflects the cultural and theological nuances of the Jewish diaspora at the time this translation was made. The Greek translation of the Old Testament was not just a literal translation of the Hebrew, but an interpretation that reflected the needs and concerns of the Jewish communities living outside Palestine. For the Eastern Orthodox Church, Psalm 151 has been a source of inspiration and theological reflection. They see this psalm as a natural continuation of the themes of praise and humility that permeate the canonical psalms. The inclusion of Psalm 151 in their Psalter highlights the importance that this religious tradition places on humility, trust in God, and the divine choice of those whom the world considers insignificant. As we reflect on Psalm 151 and its exclusion from most canonical Bibles, we are invited to consider the complexity and richness of the biblical tradition. This psalm, with its unique history and peculiar place in the history of the biblical text, offers us an opportunity to explore the diversity of interpretations and traditions that make up the Bible. It reminds us that the Bible is a living collection of texts that continues to inspire and challenge believers around the world. Psalm 151 also invites us to reflect on David himself, a character who is both a powerful king and a humble servant of God. His journey from shepherd of sheep to king of Israel is a testament to the transformative power of faith and divine grace. This psalm, in its simplicity and depth, captures the essence of the human experience of encountering the divine, an experience that is both personal and universal. Thus, Psalm 151 remains a testimony to David's faith and humility, while also serving as a reminder of the complexity and richness of the biblical tradition. It challenges us to look beyond the canonical texts and explore the many voices and stories that make up the Bible. In doing so, we are invited to deepen our own understanding of faith and our relationship with the divine, inspired by the humility and trust in God that David so eloquently expresses in his words. Therefore, Psalm 151, though not widely recognized in canonical versions of the Bible, still holds significant spiritual value. It invites us to reflect on humility, faith, and divine choice, themes that are central to all religious traditions. Its exclusion from the canon may be seen as a loss, but also as an opportunity to explore the richness and diversity of the biblical tradition, and to remember that faith is ultimately a personal and spiritual journey that goes beyond words and texts. The existence of Psalm 151 invites us to a deep reflection on the very nature of divine inspiration and the composition of Scripture. Why were certain texts included and others excluded? What is the role of the faith community in defining what is considered canonical or apocryphal? These questions have no easy answers, but they remind us of the importance of exploring and understanding the diversity of traditions that make up the Bible. In conclusion, Psalm 151 is a fascinating example of the richness and complexity of the biblical tradition. Its history, from its origins in the Dead Sea Scrolls to its inclusion in the Septuagint and exclusion from most canonical Bibles, offers us a window into the dynamic process of biblical text formation. More than that, it invites us to reflect on themes of humility, faith, and the role of God in human life, themes that are as relevant today as they were in David's time. As we explore Psalm 151, we are reminded that the Bible is a living collection of texts that continues to inspire and challenge believers around the world. If this video brought clarity and comfort to your heart, please share it with friends and family. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring and uplifting content. May God bless you all, and we'll see you in the next video.